Now, what was the CBN during your time doing that's quite different from what we're seeing now? That would have said, okay, looks like, well, we're not getting it right, or we're getting somewhere a little bit perfect.
I'm trying to remember. There was a time some banks had to be liquidated. We had issues with the management of some of the banks. The boards of those banks were called up, and the CBN and the other regulators sat down with them and told them, okay, this person is your MD, but we seem to have issues with him. Ask him to leave. We had, I'm trying to remember the banks. We had, I think, Society and Fidelity. They wanted to put certain people as the MD. We said no. Nobody heard about it.
In other words, if it's about the people, it's about MDs. It seemed to us that, well, the issue with some of those banks is about the individuals who man them, isn't it?
Could be. But I'm saying that, okay, at the time these people were, at the time we were being vetted, the CBN vets all these top people. You don't allow such people to get into the place without the CBN's approval.
You mentioned something about the powers of the CBN governor. Yeah. The powers of the CBN governor, they have always been there. How come it's an issue now?
Maybe it's an issue of maturity. Perhaps these people felt overwhelmed with the power that they have. We've had some. It was only when Solido came in that we had some relatively younger people as the helm of affairs of CBN. Had my Bonung, Vincent, they were all quite mature people.
When the new generation banks came in, so-called second generation banks, when they came in, there was a lot of excitement in the air because people were finally saying, well, this is how banking should be. You no longer, I remember then I was possibly much younger, but I remember then when the adverts came, it was not about carrying your mats to the bank to sleep there. So there was a lot of excitement in the air, and at some point when this consolidation thing came and, they went to the stock market, there was also plenty of excitement. In 2007, Nigerian banks were thought to be one of the strongest. It seems they were given returns, one of the highest yielding to investors, and it seems in all of this now, shareholders have been the losers, because right now, much as depositors will be taken care of and possibly the employees in these banks, the shareholders not being mentioned at all. From what we even hear, Kingsley Morgan, who was here the last time, and he told us that the shareholders are the last set of people.
That is the normal thing. That's the normal thing. Situation.
But being that as it may, these banks, a host of these other banks still have to, September 30 to recapitalize, and chances are that they might be going again to shareholders, to people who are willing to put their money in their shares or in their stocks. What do you foresee happening in the nearest future?
Fortunately enough, I think a lot of these banks are actually discussing with institutional investors and who will do a thorough check before they now bring in their money into the system. But we know the issue really is that the man on the street will not put his money in the banks now, at least not immediately. And the excitement that we had in 2007, like I've said, was misplaced. We had, and it's part of that's part of the problem that is now, dogging us. We had so many banks come on stream looking for funds then, and all those, all those flotations were oversubscribed. So where did the funds come from?
We have to look at this because now they have new MDs and chairmen, and we can see them all over the papers. But they say, how can all of these controversies come to an end?
The EU, like we've said in this discussion, we had the amcon, we had NDIC, and all these were supposed to protect the interest of the investor. The depositors. And now we have these big banks. I hope we won't have overlapping of functions. The big banks, maybe they are there now to run the banks, except that the banks are now under different names. So they are accountable to the CBN, or is it to amcon? So I don't know which of them they are accountable to. But I still believe that we were discussing about this issue of the powers of the CBN. I think maybe the Nigerian Economic Summit Group or whatever body should be saddled with the responsibility of charting a roadmap for us. Then when the CBN governor comes in, he now tries to, he doesn't come in with his own idea of what he will have the roadmap before him. Then he now has an idea of how to actually implement that roadmap. Not that one governor leaves, everything he does is rubbish. Then another person comes in, we start all over again. We can't continue to have that sort of situation.
And talking about can't continue, what about the names of those banks? Must they be changed now? We're looking at all of them now, Spring Bank and the others now. We now hear
I don't even know what name they will call them now.
Enterprise and all that. Must the names also change as well as the MDs that have gone?
Maybe amcon and Lamido should answer that, because what difference would it make if they are? Anyway, you are even confusing the public. I mean, the rice seller in my village, if he has maybe a son in Lagos who used to send him money from any of these banks, then suddenly you don't even know which one it is. So I don't know why in all honesty, maybe some of us don't have the information that they have that led to this. But I don't. What would it have mattered if the names remained what they were? Then you change the people at the helm of affairs and say, okay, because we want this thing to be done, we now will have this situation on our hands.
What about the rebranding? Because I mean, the thing is this: if a bank has been, take for instance, AfriBank, that has been merging controversies since almost its inception till about now, the chances are that that name will continue to ring a bell of, failure in your head, and what you might want to do is rebrand so that, when you hear another name, that's not what comes to your mind.
In spite of all these controversies we've been talking about, AfriBank had its own customers, and they weren't thinking of them as being that controversial bank. PHB had its own customers. They weren't thinking of them as being that controversial thing. Now, some of us don't even know how to call the names of these banks. So, I think it was just, I don't know, maybe they had their reasons for doing so, but I'm not sure it is a cogent enough reason to change all these names.
Okay, just before we go, it is believed that these three banks, there are actually four, but these three banks plus another one that's not mentioned here, represented 80% of the negative assets value of the 8 banks that were rescued.
Right.
So what's your reaction to that? Is it enough grounds for this switch?
There is would that be enough ground to now rebrand, to change their names? What does it make? What difference does it not make? That the issue that those people who were running those banks had the mandate of the CBN, and the CBN is supposed to actually be monitoring them as they went along. Maybe the management haven't done enough within the period they were on stream, but that was something that needed to have been. We should have been correcting that along the way. When I was I don't know what happened, but we used to have examination of these banks every other year. The CBN will examine them in 1 year. Maybe the NDIC will take them up the following year. So it was easy to really see problems coming, and then you'll be able to really tell them what really to do.
Very quickly, a closing moment. Yeah. Is this a failure of some bank examiners to nip this in the bud?
I would be unfair to them if I just say that offhand. We don't know what facts they have available to them there. I got to understand that before Lamido came in, that the previous 5 years, examinations had not been conducted the way they should be. And, people do what you inspect, not what you expect.